yeah, these are the sorts of things that leave me thinking, how can we leverage technology better in these cases? As a country, we step forward and take advantage of new technologies, but sometimes maybe not as fast as we could. We've certainly heard insights into the use of machine learning to reduce the workload that goes on to these specialists. And to me, I wonder, hey, is this another use case where we should be leveraging the technology more?
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.
Hey folks, greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Spain, and great to have Jens Anders with us from Samsung. How are you?
Very good. Thank you, Paul. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, great to have you on the show. Always lots going on in the world of Samsung, so looking forward to sort of delving into that and along with sort of a lot of the tech news of the day. But maybe you can fill listeners in on what your role is and where you fit in at Samsung.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm looking after all product portfolio with Samsung New Zealand and the islands, which is a part of Samsung New Zealand, Pacific Islands. So looking after mobile phones, home appliances, TVs, commercial displays, monitors, memories, so everything apart from the network.
Yeah, that's quite a portfolio.
Yeah, this has its ups and downs and advantages and disadvantages. You always have some products doing better than the others, but at the moment things, touch wood, we're doing okay and trying to do better every day.
Yeah, that's good. Well, we'll look forward to delving into that. Lots of things going on across the tech world, both from a local and an international perspective. One of the things that we've seen, Internet in NZ, they've put out a survey, and what they came back with is that people are quite worried in terms of online safety, and concerns are also around artificial intelligence. And so, while we look at technology and, our technology has so many positives to it, there's also these downsides. And hearing from their survey, their Internet Insights survey, that 68% of people are worried around malicious use of AI and a lack of regulation surrounding it. Yeah, obviously some people are excited, and they said, 10% of their respondents expressed more excitement than concern. 44% reported feeling more concerned than excited. So I'm not sure that, that this is, too much of probably a shock to us. But, what does it leave with you in terms of an impression? Do we really need to sort of step up on addressing some of these concerns, or is it more messaging and helping people understand the benefits of technology such as AI?
Whatever we do, and as more connected we get with more and more product, I think it gets more and more important, right? You have so many touch points and so many exposure points you have when you're looking at a phone is connected to your TV, to your security cameras, and it's all connected and it all goes somewhere, right? So there is obviously something we need to be aware and we need to accommodate for, because that is really, when we do our surveys in similar fashion here in New Zealand and also globally, privacy, security is really one of the key points where consumers are concerned about, because they're giving more and more away about their life, right? They're letting the technology be more a part of their life. So obviously you get more exposure, what you search, what you're looking for, what you want to know, even if you want to start doing some what you call AI live translation. I think it becomes more and more important that whatever people talk about, it stays within a private conversation. So I think this is one of, when we started AI a couple of years ago and we want to enhance an AI, this is something we really, really want to be at the forefront for all our products in the connectivity. Is that something, there are multiple layers to it. It's the manufacturers, ourselves. Yes, the regulation needs to be a part of that very, very upfront, and also you need to have some level of, I think, accountability, responsibility with the consumer or the user as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that our current government is reasonably bullish on AI usage, and we've seen Judith Collins encouraging things to move in a direction of leveraging AI, and I think there's a lot of wisdom to taking advantage of AI, taking advantage of other technologies, but right, we've got to make sure that the regulation kind of is appropriate where we can, but there's also, I guess, this challenge of educating ourselves as a nation around both the positives and the negatives and the risks of AI, so we can all be making good decisions and using the technologies appropriate. But now another story that popped out over the last few days was One News actually picked this up, and it was in relation to challenges with getting access to heart scans and the impact that can have when people have life-threatening conditions if they can't get access to the right sort of scans. I think this story referred specifically to echocardiogram scans, but when you see these sorts of stories about challenges getting access to healthcare, to varying testing and so on, and people in some cases having to wait considerable time. So according to one of the entities, the Heart of Aotearoa New Zealand, Kia Mana Wānui Trust, at least 15,000 patients around the country are waiting for an echocardiogram. And that can have a play on to sort of, treatment, whether it's cancer or cardiac, treatments. And these are the sorts of things that leave me thinking, how can we leverage technology better in these cases? And of course, as a country, we do tend to, step forward and take advantage of new technologies, but sometimes maybe not as fast as we could. We've certainly heard a range of stories and insights into the use of machine learning to I guess be able to reduce the workload that goes on to these specialists. And to me, I wonder, hey, is this another use case where we should be leveraging the technology more? You're wearing your Samsung watch. We've now got these sort of smart watches. I'm wearing the Apple one at the moment, but we've got these technologies that they might not necessarily do all of the things that the dedicated machinery and equipment in a specialist's office or in a hospital can do. But I think there's potentially also a place there, because if you're able to use machine learning to sort of collate that info or review the info that's being collated by these devices, I can imagine over time we're going to see that playing a reasonably important role within the health system that we just don't see at the moment, right? Which is interesting, considering we're a good few years in with smartwatches and things like the Fitbits and so on of this world. So we've been able to track a fair bit of info, but probably not fully taking advantage yet.
No, and I think it's also having a healthy approach to new devices and new technology, right? There's a certain level of, I wouldn't say fear, but caution, but also a certain level of understanding how this technology can actually make your life better, right? And you mentioned, the smartwatches, right? In the original smartwatch, everybody thought, I can do calls, even we had smartwatches that took cameras, they had pictures on that. But it's more, whenever you see any brand who bringing smartwatches on the market, the main purpose is really improving your health, right? Improving, heartbeat, blood pressure, all these, your level of kind of health you have, your energy score, your sleep score, all that is just really focusing on your health. And I think these, saying it myself, and I'm sure you have seen it, Paul, is that it actually, when you have the right kind of understanding and the right kind of position towards it, I think you would see they can actually help. Again, like we said earlier, you always have to be aware about, who has access, who gets it. I think that needs to be some form, needs to be some cadence around that. But overall, I think people understand more and more what these devices can do and what kind of information. Because in general, AI, well, how I see it, and hopefully many other people see it, is it should make your life easier. It should give you, I think, information you might not be able to understand yourself, and that health is certainly a part of this, and it will be an even bigger future as we get more and more exposure to health risk in the world, right?
You've got on the new Samsung Ring today, and I've had a little bit of a look at that today, and previously, when that was previewed locally a few months ago. How much different, do you think we get from having the different options? Because the smartwatch has been around for a while. They usually need a reasonable sort of level of reasonably regular charging, depending on the vendor. I think it was Huawei's one that had I remember always having kind of the longest battery life, but that their products have largely gone out of vogue in a lot of countries such as New Zealand in recent years. The Ring, how do you find wearing it, and what's been, I don't know how long you've had it, whether you had enough time to need to charge it yet or not?
So I was a bit skeptical because I'm not kind of in general a jewelry type of person, but I think this is also not where the Ring comes into place. So what I have figured out, that since I have it, because you wouldn't, like you said, the battery life, and you wouldn't normally wear a watch at night because it's a bit intrusive when you lay and you have it there, you're on your side, and it's not ideal. So the Ring, obviously, because it's also quite light, you don't really feel it. And what you do, we call it the watch as a kind of active health. When you do the running, the fitness, you measure it, and it's quite accurate. And the other,
so what's it getting? Is it getting sort of a heart rate reading and
heart rate, blood pressure, and particular is the sleep score. The sleep score, because it's very accurate. It really measures the amount of how many hours, minutes you have in your deep sleep, how your baby, the temperature, your heart rate during your sleep, and then get some suggestion based on AI. How can you have a better sleep? Obviously, wouldn't take an easy example, don't drink so much coffee at night, right? So I drink decaf coffee. So I think it gives you some of the suggestion as well, but because it is very passive. And the good thing is this one I had up to, I think officially it said 7 days, but I had it up to 9 days with a lot of battery. It's good when you have bigger fingers like myself. A bigger finger means bigger battery, right? So because you have more material, you can adjust it. But that's actually I'm very surprised how much I get addicted to it in the morning to say, how's my sleep score? How's my sleep score? How well did I sleep? Roughly when you wake up how it was, but I think it's always good to have a little bit of a second thought to it. Yes.
Yeah, I haven't been looking at that recently, although I do usually try and sleep with a watch on to, so I'm tracking that, but it has been a little while since I've gone back and had a look. Although last time I looked, I was sort of, and maybe this is because I have been looking, I've been getting a bit more sleep than I was previously. So, there's something to be said for measuring these sorts of things that matter and are important.
Yeah. For us, it's obviously very good from an eco point of view. So obviously we have, when you look at health itself, you can have all these devices, but how good is actually, talk about the hardware, it's also the software comes to it. Obviously, you have all the health apps and health kind of configuration which help you on your different devices to bring it all together. So obviously, like with the Samsung Health on your phone and watches to really give you a good score and hopefully makes you a more healthier person, right? So I think.
Now on another topic, killer drones is back in the news, and although we sort of often we often talk about these sorts of topics, they come up, but we've got Prime Minister Luxon who's calling for some consideration, I guess in terms of international law on how much power AI should have, because of course when we look at some of the wars that are happening internationally, whether it's what's been happening in Gaza, Ukraine, and so on, more and more we're hearing about the role of drones, and there's an AI element. I saw a documentary recently that was looking at how Israel is using surveillance and cameras in certain areas, and it was quite intense, sort of the level of surveillance that they're leaning in on. I guess the flip side is they're a place where there has been a lot of attacks on them and so on as well. So they talk about it from very much a defensive standpoint. And this particular doco was I guess raising a story of is this use over the top, was kind of what they were raising, and then in Ukraine where there's been pretty severe warfare as well as in Gaza, and a lot of lives lost, and drones playing quite a key role in there. So not a particularly light topic, but I think these are actually pretty challenging topics, because on one side we're looking for when it comes to technology, we're looking on technology to help us, but having empathy for people that are on the other side, whether it's people that are police force are wanting to listen into private conversations, and so they can maybe get to conversations that are to do with active crimes or terrorism, or whether it's the use of technology from a defensive or an offensive perspective. There's always going to be those two sides, isn't there?
Obviously, it's a difficult topic, and obviously from like you said, I think I was also very surprised how often you hear in these two very, very sad and difficult examples you get, how often the drones become be at the forefront of the news, right? It used to be, obviously, looks like unfortunately they are, and every war you have, the technology is unfortunately a part of it, right? So I think it's obviously something which will have an impact on the affected people, and I think from our point of view, I think without getting too much into sadness of the story, I think obviously from us the AI is obviously stays within security of the household, right? And availability, making life easier for these people and in your home for the consumer, right? But it's certainly something you hear more and more in regards to the topic you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and look, I think the reality is technology is going to get used across kind of every sphere. In fact, the New Zealand Defence Force, they invested in these Vector Scorpion drones that they've just had for the last few months, and so close to home, we're looking and investing in in new technologies. I guess across probably just about every sphere. So this is the reality of life in 2025, and we have to, I guess, encourage some appropriate sort of discourse. And when we know that the New Zealand Defence Force are investing in these things, important that we make sure we're kind of holding our governments to account. But also, we want to stay safe. So it's not a particularly easy one to solve. But at least it is being discussed at the highest levels in this country as to how that sort of thing can be balanced and can be appropriate.
As it might come to you for a surprise, obviously I'm not originally Kiwi, so German born. So obviously even back in Europe, there's a lot of, obviously things have changed, the tone has changed because of the global nation. So I think even there's more and more becomes around, how you also come to on the defense, but how do you protect yourself versus possible risk. So I think there's more and more budget resources going on a lot of these spaces, as sad as it sounds. But I think certainly awareness and I think of these topics needs to be addressed.
Yeah, it's interesting to sort of look at Europe and Germany. We've been in an era where the US have been something of a police force sort of globally. That tide is sort of starting to turn, so we're now seeing probably a lot more consideration to how and where to invest. And I don't think you can look at any country. There'd be virtually no country that's sort of sitting on so much cash that they're not very thoughtful around where they invest when it comes to security and defence. So I think what we will see is a continued focus on leveraging of AI and other technologies, as they consider, how best to tackle things in the years ahead. Now, on to another topic, which isn't completely a million miles away from this. I noticed a headline in The Verge titled, "Is it safe to travel with your phone right now?" And it gave me pause to think a little bit. Well, this is a topic that we've talked about in the past. When you think about it, we tend to travel with bits and pieces of technology with us, but actually that has been quite variable in terms of what happens at the border in different countries. And The Verge were very much sort of focusing on the US, because there've been some situations that have really drawn some attention to the topic by people being denied traveling into the US based on searches of their smartphones. So that was kind of a bit of a surprise. Some of the details that were shared. So there was a doctor who had an appropriate visa for traveling to the US, but was deported to Lebanon after the Customs and Border Patrol found what is stated as sympathetic photos and videos of Hezbollah leaders. Now, I guess this is when you look at Hezbollah, they're a terrorist organization. So you can understand putting some of these dots together why that might be the case. But then there was a French scientist who was turned away after a device search basically brought up messages that were criticizing the Trump administration's cut to research programs, which officers said that conveyed hatred of Trump and could be qualified as terrorism. So you get into a pretty challenging position of, if you're starting to judge people on whether they like the current kind of government in a given country, at the border, based on these sorts of searches. Now, both of these examples, there was a reference to terrorism, which I think look, this is the reason that we have customs and border control. That's one of the reasons is that nobody wants to be letting terrorists into their country to potentially perform acts of terrorism. But I guess this comment around what's seen in somebody's phone suggesting a hatred of the government, of a prime minister, and so on. How do you draw those lines? And how does this play out in the future? If this is what's happening in 2025, where could we be in sort of 5 or 10 years in terms of how much do you drill into people's phones? How much do you drill into people's thought lives? How far can the technology kind of go? And does that mean that people are very, very limited in terms of where they travel? I think there's a lot of people that would travel to countries where they don't necessarily agree with the politics or the regime that operates in that country.
Especially when you go on to the US, I'm sure most people have to come to the US, and how long you have to wait at the border control already, right? When it takes you, when you're lucky, you get out of that in LA to 3 hours. If you add now that additional work for every person or half of the people who come in there, I think you can spend a day at the airport, But like you said, where do you draw the line, right? Well, it's just a subjective opinion of a border control officer. I don't know. It will be very hard to just have a very fair and transparent and guideline around this, right? Because this is, again, it's you talking people to people. Are there any regulation around this? And we're all thankful for all the work everybody doing. It was just to protect the population, and I think we need to be aware of this, that there are threats out there which we wouldn't even have any kind of knowledge about, what's happening. But so you want to be protected, you want to be safe, and that's a great thing in New Zealand, right? For us, it's such a safe country and such a great country. But and obviously, I'm not American, and I'm sure America had its own challenges. The phone, from a technology point of view, how you do the phone screen, where does it stop? What do you do? I think that seems to be a very cumbersome process. So I wouldn't, and then whom you pick out? Do you pick out people based on their ethnicity or how they look on the day? I think it could be a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, and look, I mean, you could imagine a scenario where, hey, that's a pretty time-consuming thing. So you hand it all over to the AI to do, right? The AI does a scan of somebody's phone, scan of somebody's social media, and it makes a decision on whether, or it gives a recommendation on whether you're allowed to enter a particular country. So it sort of sounds quite George Orwell, 1984 kind of like, but also, there is that duty of care and if we look back at the varying kind of, terrorism attacks, you wonder, if some of this technology had been applied in some of these other cases, what would you have found? We had our own, case with the mosque attacks in Christchurch, and you wonder, how much knowledge would there have been in the attacker's phone or devices that could have given something away? But I think you do need to you also need to draw lines at some point, but well above my pay grade to be able to give sort of solid guidance on how we should get that right. But again, I think we've got to be talking about it and thinking about it, and as individuals we can make those choices and we can decide, well, if we're uncomfortable with what America does, we can choose not to visit. Easier said than done if that's part of your work and so on, right? But we are kind of entering a period where things are probably getting more complicated when it comes to travel and safety in some regards.
Absolutely.
Now, one more big topic, which I don't think we're probably going to spend a lot of time on because I'm keen to delve into sort of Samsung. But this new book, the tell-all book, Careless People, by former Facebook Meta employee Sarah Wynne Williams, we've seen that Meta were able to win an emergency arbitration to halt the promotion of the book and sort of a gag order coming out, and so I find this interesting because when something like this happens, it tends to shine potentially a lot more light and focus on the media at hand. So you can imagine that Careless People potentially is going to get lots and lots of attention. It's already been on the bestseller lists, but by getting blocked, Meta might not actually save themselves any pain and potentially get more pain, right?
Yeah. So especially everything what's around Meta these days, right? There's obviously extra awareness and extra curiosity when it comes to consumer. I think.
So I think what they got was the book not being taken off shelves, but the promotion of it was being stopped. But of course, the media attention ends up becoming the bigger promoter there, right? So, it certainly prompted me to go and have a look and look to buy the audio book online. So
finished it yet?
So that's on my list. I haven't got to it yet, but so delving into sort of the world of Samsung, there's I guess lots of elements. The smartphones and the gadgets, the watches, the rings, all the different things that you do through to TVs and white goods and so on. So there's a whole lot there. But maybe before we sort of jump into that breadth, one of the areas that we chatted about that should be on the radar is 3G stopping in New Zealand. Largely by the end of 2025 at this stage. Australia has already been through that process. So maybe you can talk to us around, what you've seen and what maybe the learnings are out of this change in Australia, because it seems like, some folks were ill prepared for 3G to stop because they had 3G devices and they all suddenly stopped working. So what should we be doing differently in New Zealand?
Yeah, I think it's also not only the consumer in Australia, it's also New Zealand consumer, for example, you have your parents want to visit their kids in Australia because they're there and they're coming there with a 3G phone, potentially a feature phone, right, which you can still have out there, and then you come out, want to call the kids at the airport, please pick me up, and then nothing is working.
Your phone doesn't work,
So I think the awareness is a big piece of this. So I know that consumer tends to leave things to the last minute often, and they might not be aware, and especially some of the demographics which still have 3G phones. And we're also talking, 4G phones with a different bandwidth as well, which maybe came into the country through some way. They also will not function at a certain time. What the date is, I don't think it is 100% clear yet. But I think the most important part when I speak to my Samsung Australia colleagues is that potentially it was a lack of awareness and maybe not enough efforts done from the suppliers as well, the operators, to just make sure what angle can we use to talk to these consumers, because it's quite hard to talk to these consumers because a lot of them might not be on Facebook, social media. Do we need to use traditional media? And I was also not at Samsung at the time, but I remember when I was a consumer myself, when there was the digital switch for TVs, I think there was a lot of awareness. Hey, make sure your TV changes completely. You might not be aware. And they try to simplify the message. I think at the moment, obviously, there are a few organizations that look into that, like the telecommunications organization, I think. And again, the operators will have a good view on who their customers are, because they can see on which network they are. We can see a little bit, but obviously on a broad spectrum, how many 3G devices are still active in New Zealand from Samsung perspective. So I think it is a really awareness and the simplification of the message, what is actually happening, is important, because if you get too technical, you will lose.
You'll leave people behind, right? Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, and I guess there's been. Yeah, we've been through sort of technological and non-technological changes in the past. Back before my day was the change of currency. So we moved to the dollar. There's all sorts of changes that kind of get foisted upon us, and hopefully mostly for good reason. And I think combining the spectrum that's being used for 3G now, moving that in so it can be used for 4G and 5G, largely that's going to be a benefit in terms of improved performance and coverage on sort of 4G and 5G. I'm kind of picking that our telcos have a reasonably good sort of handle on this, and that if we look at what each network has, they would be able to get a take on everyone that's every connection that they have. If that connection is never going on to 4G or 5G, they could probably target people individually. Would that be right? So they can actually in advance of the switch off of 3G, they would be able to do direct messaging back to those consumers or business customers who are exclusively on 3G devices?
Oh, well, I think from my assumption, obviously, everybody who has most people have a phone and have a postpaid contract, they have a certain connection to the telcos, right? And I'm sure there's some based on data privacy or that there's a certain level of communication which can be done and can't be done. Without being too much into the details of that, but obviously certainly you have a relationship to your telco from that point of view. So I think they're working quite, and we're working with all of them together. What can we do to help as well? So because obviously it also comes back to us when somebody can't use their Samsung phones. They don't really know, is it the network? Is it the software, the hardware, the network? So obviously it comes back to us as well, and we want to have a very smooth process in there as well. If everybody goes at the same time, you have a lot of people then suddenly don't know what's going on, and they trying to call. Not sure, maybe they still have a landline at home.
Not many.
So somebody to help them because their phone is not working, or they will storm into the telco stores and the malls and trying to sort that out. But ideally, we can maybe pull that kind of demand forward, so it's a bit more smoother, right? Rather than everything comes at one day or 1 week, because that would obviously be mayhem.
We're not always very good in New Zealand, and I don't know how it is elsewhere in the world, but of doing these things in advance. And you often hear about it with concerts and so on, and it gets up to quite the last minute before the a lot of people buy their tickets for varying reasons. And I went to the Black Caps game versus Pakistan on Friday at Eden Park, and it was sort of the same thing. We were bouncing around the idea of going, and there wasn't any particular pressure. There was plenty of space, so we bought our tickets. I don't know, maybe a day, roughly a day, in advance. So, I guess that creates challenges in terms of the right devices being available and choice and so on. So, probably there is some benefit for people to plan ahead a little bit and pick up the device that best suits them earlier, because if it is left too late, they may well get to a position where there aren't enough devices to go around, or there's not the best choices.
Yeah, and I'm obviously selfishly looking at phones, but there's so many other technology on a 3G network, right? I'm not sure. Garage door openers, health equipment, there's so many more to it which are connected to networks than only phones, right? Yeah. Is everybody aware of these other products out there which are 3G enabled? So I'm not sure if, as I said, there's a lobby group or any kind of group looking more details into that, because I know it was like this when TV switched over. Yeah. So I'm just hopefully everybody can listen today, making sure you shout it out loud from the rooftop that there's something happened, so everyone that know they still, maybe if you still see a feature phone running around somewhere, maybe they may remind these people it's a good time to switch. Yep.
Definitely something to think about, and I guess Samsung will benefit from selling some new gadgets in the mix there. Yeah,
and I think the good thing with the phones these days, and we can see is that there's still obviously a lot of people that change their phones every roughly 2 years, but there's still people who are using their phone for 5, 6, 7 years, and there's a lot of people just for example my dad back in Germany, with his 84 years old, he still had a Samsung feature phone. I didn't even know that Samsung still does feature phones, but apparently he bought that not so long ago. So there's still that kind of, skepticism and scareness of these new smartphone and technology, and I'm sure he's not the only one out there. So then bringing people from a feature phone to a smartphone, it's not going to be an easy job for everybody in store and the operators to trying, or the retailer stores to trying to overcome that skepticism and fear for this new smart technology. Right?
Yeah. I'm sure. There'll be a few transition pains there. Now, looking at the broader sort of range of things that Samsung sells in New Zealand, and we were talking about AI, earlier. I'm kind of curious on the role that you see AI playing. Before we started, we were kind of talking around ovens that can kind of look and I guess using some machine learning, able to adjust maybe you're roasting a chicken and it can have a look and go, oh, it's not quite as dark as it usually would be, or what have you, and can maybe extend the cooking time a little bit, or all these sort of variations. What are the things that sort of stand out to you the most as being helpful at this time? Because there is this kind of level of we've had greenwashing in the past. There's a sort of level of AI washing everything. We've got a coffee machine here that was touted as using AI in order to, I think it was sort of get the right pressure on the coffee when it does the tampering, and also sort of measuring whether you've got the right amount of coffee. Now, I guess you could kind of you can maybe call a bit of simple machine learning that's AI. But AI is not necessarily the title you would apply, and of course we're not that far into these sorts of technologies sort of being applied. But what's taken your attention? You think are kind of the best use cases of AI within consumer electronics and tech?
I'm so glad to add to that because the earlier AI topics were a bit heavy, right? So I think there comes a bit more where I can add a little bit more value to it. I think it's like you said, AI washing was, you mentioned that, and it's really important because we had consumers earlier when we started, or we now have the family hub fridges now with AI, and then people are saying, oh, AI for fridges, washing machine, really? Right? So are you not taking it a bit too far? But it's kind of how we want to segment it. You obviously have what you call the generative AI. So I generate content based on some other sources, historic learnings I have, like the language, the videos. I generate a video based on some input I have. I generate a text. I generate a song. I generate a poem. So I think that's quite, people are quite aware of this. And especially when it comes to looking after white goods and TV as well, it's the what we call predictive AI. So what I mean with predictive AI, like the products we have with fridges, washing machine, and ovens and vacuum cleaners to a certain level of product portfolio, they have sensors. There's sensors. As an example, simple example is the washing machine. You put in your fabric into the washing machine. The sensor recognizes what kind of fabric that is, senses how dirty that is, and then it gives you the ability, it just gives you the suggestion, or predicts this is the right washing cycle, this is the right detergent you need, because these days the washing machine, you don't put detergent to have the auto dispenser. It just gives you the right amount of water you have to use and the right amount of energy you have to use. And so I think this is a really good examples how AI can help. You're doing the right choices and you save a lot of money as well by not using enough water or energy. And I think this is where the family hub fridge, for example, a fridge who can have sensors and recognize the food and just gives you a message on your phone, hey, before that date, use that bacon because it's going to be over because you can't use it anymore. Or it recognizes you have a chicken and a lemon in your fridge and say, oh, maybe when you want a recipe, maybe lemon chicken, right? That's what you have in there. And you mentioned the oven and even vacuum cleaners who sensor the ground, the floor, the fabric, the whatever hard floor you have, and giving you the right adjustment. I think there's a big part, and it also generated very strong in Europe because the energy costs and gas prices, and they have gone through the roof.
Been crazy, yeah.
And what they had to do, because your home appliances are one of the key contributor to your energy bill. How can you, on top of your normally energy rating, how can you help AI to really save you some money and some energy? So we have good partnership with some big energy companies in New Zealand. So we also want to go to the next level. How then on the app can say, this, which things is already there, but every next level, this is the time you should use your cycle, your washing, right? This is the time when you use the most energy. I think really making it easy for the consumer and also helping to save some costs as well.
Yeah,
so again, generative AI, predictive AI, this is where we kind of put it into these buckets.
Yep. One thing that comes to mind for me, I've been on a power plan, which is, I guess, targeting, having an electric vehicle. And so we were getting 9 p.m. till midnight, and they don't charge you for the power during that window of time. And I always feel guilty if I'm, putting on, washing machine or dryer, and it's 8:30, but I'm thinking, will I remember to do it later? So I guess probably the technology is there to pick a start time and so on.
Yes, of course.
These days, so you've got that sort of intelligence, and I guess as time goes on, those dots will kind of get joined up, so it'll know what power plan you're on and can maybe adjust or at least give you the option to delay the start until you're on a kind of a lower rate, whether it's a free rate or a discounted off-peak rate or what have you.
I think the good thing is, and I'm 100% aware of Meta, the Meta universe, with all the brands being a part of that ecosystem, like the Arlo, Eufy, Samsung. So you can bring it all together as well, and then obviously you have your predetermined kind of scenarios, right? You came home, the lights go on automatically when the heater goes on and off, and then you could do the same. You add the washing machine to it as well. So
okay.
we talk then it goes from AI, because a lot of people think AI is also connected home, but connected home is a completely different story as well. So that's always something we have to be aware of as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. So yeah, that's probably a good thing to be thinking about is the role of technologies such as Matter, that allow you to have those smart home devices all linked up. That was interesting around the fridge being able to let you know what's kind of going on in the fridge. So how far down that track are you at the moment? What are the current kind of
it's already out there. So it's already out
Yeah.
there. So the examples I made, it's already out there in a high number of products. It's now, again, I think all the AI features and all the future features, because it's like the phones, what can you change on the phones in regards to the design or the hardware? What can you change for the fridge in regards to design and hardware? It's already out there. So it's now make them either faster, make them more reliable, more durable, and I think especially when it comes cost efficient. So that's where the AI with the cost efficiency and with the fastness and with the giving you the suggestion comes, and it's already out there. It's already happening. The oven you mentioned earlier, it's already out there.
Yeah,
right? The fridge is already out there.
And how do you keep those things up to date? For instance, so we've got some friends. They've got one of your smart fridges with a touch screen. I guess it's got the camera into the fridge and so on. But it was probably bought maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So in terms of bringing through all those latest capabilities, that becomes a bit of a challenge in terms of you can't necessarily roll back all of the features. Those are often going to come with kind of a new gadget. I mean, for me, I've been getting a meal delivery service, right? HelloFresh. And now I'm thinking, in the future, could the technology get kind of good enough from terms of what Samsung can do that I can throw a whole lot of stuff in the fridge and then it's going to, without me having to make a big effort, and I guess this is part of the challenge if you're monitoring what's in there, how much effort is it for the individual as they put food into the fridge, how smart is that? But I imagine in the future you'll be able to fully keep track of everything that's gone in, how long it's been in there, I guess even using the camera to have a look and recognize that a particular fruit or vegetable is degrading and so on. And so you could effectively get almost an equivalent of a HelloFresh just based on you throw everything in there and it tells you and it knows what needs throwing out, what's of the appropriate sort of quantity levels and those sorts of things. But there's that challenge of keeping the devices current. How does Samsung sort of address that, in these devices? Because you end up with an issue if everyone buying a smart fridge, which are pretty big devices, is having to put them into landfill after 3 or 4 years. That's probably not the ideal scenario. Yet buyers of that type of technology are kind of wanting the latest features as well.
Especially on software, I think to upgrade hardware, without being in the actually homes itself is a bit difficult. Obviously, the software is one which is really key focus for us to make it sure that we ensure our consumers that the software updates are as long as possible. Yeah. Yes, you could say you want to sell products, but we know we can only sell products by creating loyalty, trust, and loyalty you not only create in 1 or 2 years, you create loyalty in 6, 7 years. And for example, you see with the phones, then all the phones they have 6, 7 years software and security update, right? They used to be 1 or 2 years. So
I think that's a huge step forward.
And especially the entry piece as well, the new A series we just launched there. That is, you can, you buy this now for a reasonable price, and for another 6, 7 years, these products, they will always get an upgrade. They're not left behind. They always get secure, because security is the other. It's a software and security update. We do this with TVs as well. So we're working very closely with all the streaming providers globally and locally that we ensure that TVs, remember when Spark Sport came out, right? It was about which TV is in, or my TV is from 2018. Oh no, it does not. So I think making sure that these times are expanded as possible. Maybe 10, 15 years ago when companies has a different approach, we just want to resell more and more products. No, I think we have passed that point. We know that on a long journey, this is what we have to do. So we already doing this with TV and phones already for the time periods I mentioned. And the same is obviously now with because the chipset in the products is so advanced that the software is always updated. As long as you have Wi-Fi connected to your washing machine and your fridge, the software updates going forward will be coming as well. Because obviously we, being one of the biggest, people hardly know that we're one of the biggest chip manufacturers in the world as well, right? So we always know the end product, but not that how many Samsung products are in other products, even our competitors' product. So I think there's with the whole AI that has completely changed the game. So you will be able also going forward to upgrade the software in any of the products which are AI enabled.
Yeah, and at the moment you're not really sort of publishing time, how many years a particular fridge or these sort of appliances?
We do not for the fridge and washing machine.
Yeah.
We do for the phones,
Yeah.
but the fridge and washing machine. But that's the next steps.
Yeah.
And because obviously the AI enabled features in our home appliances is relatively new, so we will be able now to
develop over time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What's the impact of sort of what's happening in terms of trade wars internationally? What's the impact of those things on New Zealand consumers?
I think I never know that I will at one stage become a foreign exchange expert, but every time when there's the New Zealand government bank or the Fed in the US doing something or something happen or Trump says something, it obviously has an impact on our exchange rate. And there's pros and cons, right? So giving you an example, when we obviously have an interest rate cut in New Zealand, it's great to stimulate the demand. On the other side, when you look at global investors, they're stepping away a little bit from the New Zealand dollar. That means the US dollar becomes higher versus New Zealand dollar, means everything we import becomes more expensive. So the challenge, what you have, everything, most people who operate in US dollars, higher US dollars means potentially risk again for inflation, because you need to pass on, we pay in, our factories, so they demand in US dollars, so like other companies as well. That means there's always something we have to have an eye on. Obviously, recently I think we were pretty good, and especially with the newest phone launches, to keep the prices as much as we can to make them accessible. But I think the interesting part is how much the trade wars have an impact on global pricing, and then what it means in the end product cost for the consumer. So that's why I'm looking at the US dollars very, very regular. So
yeah, and look, if you look at everything through that US dollar lens, then you kind of expect everything to go up. But of course, there are elements where not everything happens in US dollars, and certainly a bunch of countries where the cost of labor versus New Zealand US dollar has gone down and so on. I saw a big manufacturer who's launched a new product in I don't know, past 2 or 3 weeks, and I noticed that their price in the US had dropped, and it didn't. I'm not sure whether we'd kind of seen an equivalent drop in the New Zealand dollar, pricing. So it was kind of interesting. Yeah, it'd be interesting to sort of see and to track these things. But it's certainly pleasing to see we're not seeing a whole lot of price increases. Certainly just yet. So
I think we also, from Samsung perspective, we are well connected globally. I think the hundreds of factories on these centers we have in different countries, in the US as well, So I think there's a good trading relationship with Samsung with most major economies in the world. So I think that also helps having that of relationship and that part to trying to be as resilient as we can. I think we chatted earlier. I think from our side, it has its pros and cons having more product portfolios, right? Obviously, we have phones, TVs, home appliances. So there's always different aspect to the market. TV market is different, behaves different, like the mobile phone market and the white goods market. So they're different component, because we know people buy a phone the different circumstances. Brighter TV, different to it used to be, you know, TVs used every time when there's a big Rugby World Cup. It was on a lot of TVs, but this time has unfortunately gone. Right? Otherwise, I would propose for a Rugby World Cup being here every year. But and then obviously home appliances is all very strongly linked also to the construction industry, because we know a lot of people buy new fridges, new ovens, new washing machines when they either renovate or they buy a new house. Right? So I think that's a big part of that as well.
Interesting. And we haven't seen the same uptake on buying new homes, probably the current economy. That's probably about all we can squeeze in for this week. Is there anything major that we've missed that you wanted to touch on?
No, I think we touch on most of that. I think from our point of view, I think it was obviously the economy, like everybody would have felt it over the last few years. But everyone I speak to, there's some light at the end of the tunnel where people say, hey, yeah, we can see, and obviously we're dealing a lot with retailers, with operators, you know, they feel it's still tough out there, but things seems to look much better, and we can start seeing as well from our side. So I think especially technology, where we know that evolves every day, every week, every month, right? I think that's a good industry to be in, and I'm sure there will be more and more little gadget I can show you. Going forward.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not going to stop anytime soon. Oh, well, great to catch up, Jens.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks for joining me on the New Zealand Tech Podcast. Of course, also a big thank you to our show partners, to 1NZ, 2 Degrees, Spark HP, and Gorilla Technology. For those that are listening to the audio, make sure you're following us on the likes of YouTube or LinkedIn and the other platforms that we'll often also stream video on. So thanks, everyone, and
thank you.
Thanks again,
Paul.
Jens.
Thank you.
All right. Cheers.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.